at least 20 Tory MPs are expected to submit letters of no confidence in him later, following his involvement at parties that took place at Downing Street during the height of lockdown.
ITV News UK editor Paul Brand, who helped break the story by obtaining the email that proved over 100 staff were invited to drinks in the No. 10 Garden in May 2020, joins us now from West London. Paul, I'm not sure, like many, as I was going to bed last night, I was watching your Twitter feed. I mean, you got a real sense that things are starting to change within Westminster. There are secret meetings taking place, real discontent amongst the Conservative Party. What's your sense of what's happening right now?
Well, Adil, the atmosphere last night was frantic, it was febrile, it was frenetic, it was fractious. I mean, what other words can you come up with that begin with an F? But really, it was an absolutely astonishing night. Well, yeah, maybe maybe not some words, but it really was a very, very excitable evening last night. And it's difficult, all of this, because essentially getting rid of a Conservative Party leader is a bit like a silent auction, right? You don't know what other people are bidding. You don't know who is bidding to get rid of the Prime Minister and who isn't, who's sending these letters to this 1922 committee, this committee that oversees the whole process. And we have been here before where MPs have said, oh yeah, I'll put in a letter. And actually they're just trying to impress their colleagues or promise their colleagues that they are rebellious when they're not. But speaking to MPs who are trying to organise the Prime Minister's downfall last night, they were incredibly excited that they do feel that they have the prospect of getting to this magic 54 letters, if not today, then certainly in the coming days. One MP said to me last night, up the revolution. Another said to me that the whips were going out, the No. 10 operation was in full swing, trying to talk people down, trying to threaten them, they said. And they said that MPs were like lambs to the slaughter last night for the man who wanted to be king of the world, as they put it, and threw it all away. So it really is an extraordinarily fractious environment right now in the Conservative Party, and today is going to be fascinating.
It is. Paul, will obviously the 54 letters have to go in to reach the tipping point for a leadership contest to be held? Or, you know, effectively a vote of confidence in the Prime Minister. But does the whole party feel the same way? Because if he gets a simple majority, then of course he's safe, isn't he?
Yeah, and that is going to be a really interesting question. My sense is that if it goes to a confidence vote, so the whole party then votes, all the MPs vote on whether or not they want to keep Boris Johnson, whether they have confidence in him, at that point it becomes far easier for MPs to start withdrawing their support, because that is a secret ballot. So it takes a bit of guts to send a letter in. It's likely that you're kind of going to be found out. You know, there's a lot of gossip in Westminster about who hasn't sent a letter. It's quite a bold move. It takes, you know, it's quite a high bar, I suppose, to send in a letter. But once you've got to the point where colleagues are saying, we've got no confidence in the Prime Minister, we're going to have this vote, at that point, I think it's actually easier to withdraw your support. So it's possible that things could fall away very quickly for Boris Johnson. Or, on the other hand, it's possible that the majority isn't there and that he does stay on.
Yeah. Oh, it's possible that he could win the confidence vote, but there's still such a majority or a number of people that voted against him that makes his situation untenable. But what's your sense of sort of outside of Westminster and the public and constituents? Do you think, in the end, it seems ridiculous that they might have made their mind up, but the decision of whether he goes is the Conservative Party's. It's almost like the public and electorate are paralysed at this point.
Yeah, this is an internal party process at the end of the day. In fact, we're not really talking about who's the Prime Minister, we're talking about who's the leader of the Conservative Party. That's what's at stake here. And the two things, of course, are inherently tied together, which is why one thing follows another. But ultimately, Conservative MPs are reacting right now to the feedback they're getting from their constituents. So although we might say this is totally internal, actually what they're talking about is the anger that they've received directly from constituents, particularly over the weekend. All the emails they've had, for example, about the parties following just ahead of the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral, the Prime Minister claiming last week that, you know, he didn't know it was a party in the garden of Downing Street. All of that is now coming back via feedback to Conservative MPs. And really yesterday's interview that the Prime Minister didn't help at all, because there he was sort of saying, you know, look, nobody told me that this party in the garden on the 20th of May 2020 was breaking the rules. Well, you know, didn't he listen to his own advice that he was giving from the podium day after day after day? I mean, this wasn't about sitting on a bench and having a coffee versus walking around the park carrying a coffee and all those sort of strange rules we got into last summer. This was a party for over 100 people. And if the Prime Minister needed to be told that that was against the rules, many MPs found that incredulous yesterday and felt that their constituents would be even more angry.
Yeah. Paul, just before we let you go, you are the reporter who broke the story of the email, the invitation, and you're the reporter who broke the story of the pictures of the mock press conference, which led to Allegra Stratton resigning. So you are the right person to ask, do you think there is more evidence to come out?
We know that there is more evidence. It's difficult to get hold of, and you don't always know whether it's rumour or whether it really does exist. But certainly the likes of Dominic Cummings are saying, for example, that there are photographs of parties that do exist. The problem is that often they're in the hands of people who could be culpable themselves for holding those parties. So there's not always an incentive for these things to be leaked. And sometimes as journalists, we get asked, why is it taking so long for these things to come out? It's because the people who were at the parties didn't always want to leak things that might implicate themselves. And it's taken time for those who perhaps fell out with Boris Johnson to peel away from him and to decide they did want to leak the information in the end. But certainly, my understanding is that there is more evidence out there. It's just a question of whether, the likes of me can actually get hold of it and put it into the public domain or not.
Interesting. Paul, thanks very much indeed.